honor to be here with all of you at the Global Virtual Summit. Hi.
Hello, Christine. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Before starting our session, I want to introduce you to our audience, Christine. Christine is a lawyer and globally recognized inclusion and leadership expert, named among the world's top 50 DEI leaders by The Economist. Holding key HR executive roles such as a Chief Diversity Officer, she is dedicated to advancing women's leadership and fostering inclusive workplaces worldwide. That was really a fabulous bio, Christine, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so very much. That's very kind. And I am coming to all of you with a call to action to promote women's advancement and how we can get more women to leadership roles and beyond. I will be covering two main topics between now and the full hour. So roughly 10, 13 minutes if we have a little bit of Q&A. So the first topic I'd like to share with every one of you is something, please do remember, it is the PI model. PI stands for Performance, Image, Exposure, PI. And if you imagine, you look at the pie and the three elements, I'm going to repeat them. Performance, how good you are in your job. Image, who knows about you. And exposure, who will talk about you. What do you think is the most important element to make it to the top or to make it to any kind of big role? Is it performance, how good you do? Is it the image you have when you leave the room, what people say about you, or is it who knows you and knows what you're good at? And I'm not going to do a poll or anything. I'm going to give you the answer right away. The performance is 10% from 100. It's the least important. It's important to get into a company. It's important to do a great education to qualify. But once you are within any organization, everybody's performing, more or less. Are you out? But it's not going to get you to the top because everybody's performing. The image is around 30, 40%. We're still looking at the pie. But the single most important is the element of exposure. Because how do careers run? People talk about you in a talent review. They talk about you when it comes to international positions. They recommend you to colleagues. And that is the exposure element. So to know who is great at their job, and people know this and will recommend you. And here's the big difference between men and women. Men are extremely good at this element. They have a natural tendency to be very, very good at the exposure. Whereas women very often, we have now more women than ever leaving highly educated, not only in any university topics, but in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math. More and more women are coming into the workforce. So don't tell me there is not a pipeline of women. However, women tend to do an amazing job working incredible hours, but not investing a lot of time in this exposure element to make sure that people really know you, recommend you. And that means networking. That also sometimes means talking about the great things you're doing, and you should be proud of them because you are all amazing. So talk about it, show what you have done, because that is the only way to the top. So that is the first golden bullet. Now I'm shifting to the second, and the second has to do with mentoring. You have all heard a lot about mentoring. Maybe a lot of you are part of mentoring programs. You're either mentees or mentors. Mentoring has been around for 20, 25 years. And what are the results? Very, very disappointing, right? We are still not seeing enough women at the top. So therefore, What about shifting gear? And instead of mentoring, bringing in the element of active sponsorship. So I'm going to talk a bit about what the difference is. Remember this one sentence. Mentoring is to talk with someone. Sponsoring is to talk about someone. And can you all see how I'm linking this to the pie model? So mentoring means you have a mentor, a mentee relationship. You meet once or twice per year, per month, whenever. You talk about your job, your challenges. So what? Sponsorship, in particular in a structured way, means that there is someone who is looking after you, let's say selects for 1 year to be your sponsor and gets to know you, your career ambition, puts his or her job at the top, at the line, is really an advocate. Some like to use the word protégé. The United States don't like protégé, others like protégé. So any kind of active sponsorship from the top leadership of the organization to invest into a career of a woman, to get to know her, to understand what she's good at, to make a career plan, to discuss her ambition. And then when it comes to the famous moments of truth, talent reviews, I'm repeating myself, stretch assignments, international mobility, and you're not in the room, but you will be discussed. And that is the moment where your sponsor will speak up and say, I know her, she can do this. And that's when you get the job, that's when you get the promotion, that's when you get the international assignment you were dreaming of. So this goes for all gender, but in particular for women. I'm going to repeat it. The pie model, performance, image, exposure. Women out there, call to action, focus on getting your amazing work out. People need to know what you can do, and then they will talk about this, and that's when it happens. And the other is structured sponsorship versus this kind of not really successful mentoring. I want to finish off by saying a little bit on the global geopolitical context. The geopolitical context currently is very challenging of the diversity, equity, and inclusion. We can see, and I'm sure some of you are feeling it, a shift. In some places of the United States, we can no longer advocate for the word diversity nor equity. The two words we can use, and these are for all of us invested in gender equality and people function in PNC, HR, CHROs, any exposure in global context or US market, the two things that will be with us for the next, I would imagine, 3 years and 9 months will be focusing anything around inclusion, conscious inclusion, no longer unconscious bias. We cannot use the word bias anymore. It's also on the list. So conscious inclusion, inclusion, belonging. This is really where it goes. So we will see a lot of people working in people and culture, HR, D&I, change the function and the name to something that is more along the lines of inclusion, inclusion and well-being, inclusion and belonging. And that doesn't mean that we are stopping the work, but what it really means is we are shifting. The work is not going to go away. The topics are still out there. And these were my 3 key messages. PI, performance, image, exposure. Focus on exposure, the E, PEI, PI. The second, search for a sponsor, get a sponsor. Mentoring is not enough. And the third, even though we have a very challenging geopolitical context currently, the names might change. It will be all going for inclusion and belonging, but we are still out there. The topics don't go away. They are just increasing. And with this, I want to, I can see a few hellos here in the chat. Very nice to meet you all in the chat. If there are any questions, otherwise, I wish you all a wonderful conference, great takeaways, great to meet you here. Reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to be connected. Send me a DM if there is anything around career advice that I could give you, anything. I'm here. You know where to find me. I really appreciate you all. I think it's great you're taking the time. And the future is female, if I can say so. Thank you very much. I'm just sitting a little bit to see if there's any questions, comments, and obviously I want to enter and exit politely. Melinda, anything? I think you might be.
Definitely the future is female. I agree, Kristen. And we have a question from our audience. Okay. What strategies have you found most effective in advancing women's leadership on the global scale?
Good question. And it's really coming back to these elements I just mentioned. Seek out sponsorship. Don't settle for mentoring. Find someone who is important and high in the organization. Ideally, it shouldn't be us, it should be the organization to put this in place. So HR colleagues out there, talk to the ExCom, push the topic of sponsorship, and for 1 year, an ExCom member, a leadership member selects one female employee, high potential, of course, and then they work, they get to know each other, you promote them. So it is the sponsorship, and individually it's, we need to be proud of what we do. We need to shout it out. Women are amazing. And like I said, the education nowadays and the numbers of women coming into fields that we need for AI, for the future, we should be so proud and so excited to be living at this time.
We got the best answer, Kristen.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Have a wonderful conference. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye, everyone. The future is female. Ciao, ciao.
Yes, let's have a 5 minutes of break.